Welcome back, everyone. I am David Wasilewski, the Executive Director of the Vera Institute for Business Ethics at Duquesne University, and I welcome you back to Pittsburgh on a early, beautiful spring day. And we are presenting the next segment of our Ethics Vibes series of podcasts, particularly the Ethical AI and the Common Good series. Today, I'd like to welcome my friend and colleague, Dr. Alejo Sison from the School of Economics of the University of Navarra. Let me tell you a little bit about his background, and because he's so accomplished, I need to read a little bit of this, but he also has accreditation as full professor from the Spanish State University system. He is the visiting professor at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America and adjunct professor at the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University. He's also senior research fellow at the Center for Business and Society of IESE Business School, and he was president of the European Business Ethics Network as well as the Society for Business Ethics. He ranks among the top 2% of the world's researchers in applied ethics in business and management, and his research focuses on the intersection of ethics, economics, and politics, with a particular focus on virtues and the common good. We've invited Dr. Sison here to talk about his forthcoming book. So I'd like to introduce you to him. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you for doing this. We are very honored to have you, such an accomplished scholar, but just really accessible, your message to a lot of people. So for this series of Ethical AI and the Common Good, I think it's a perfect fit for you to talk about your forthcoming book. So how did that come about? How did you get the idea for this book? And I know is rooted in your own passion for this topic.
That's true. So I have to play to my strengths. I focused on virtue ethics and principles of Catholic social teaching. And then a couple of years back, it seemed obvious to me that the next big thing was going to be AI. So how could we engage with AI in the business school from a business perspective? And so I started digging into the material. I'm not a very technical person. By training, I studied philosophy after all. But so my interest in the field would continue to be the human perspective, right? And when I started reading, I was kind of surprised, for instance, that immediately there was some sort of a fork in the road between AI safety and AI ethics. Okay, so AI safety is concerned about systems being safe, reliable, and trustworthy. I'm all for that.
Oh yeah, and that's the purpose of this series of the podcast, you know,
Yes.
to have ethical AI to
Yes.
address the common good.
Yes. Whereas AI ethics focused more on how we human beings achieve our purposes through AI. And you had to make a choice between one thing and the other. So I was kind of surprised because I said, why? Why have to make that choice? Can't we have both together? And so I started doing my research, and I also found out that the ethical approaches to AI engagement weren't entirely satisfactory. You must recall that the ones who are leading in this field are mostly for-profit institutions. So the cost-benefit analysis is somehow baked into their operations, right? Because they're accountable to their shareholders. On the other hand, you also have those who approach it from the so-called value alignment objective, meaning trying to bake ethics into the model through algorithms. Yeah? Algorithms are, of course, just a part of the whole system, because apart from the algorithms, you have the data themselves, the model architecture, and the human beings who are engaging with the machines, right? So I said there has to be some space for virtues here, because after all, these are objects that serve our own purposes, and they have to make life easier for us or better for us, which is the whole purpose in inventing tools, after all, right?
Right. So tell us story behind the title of the book.
Okay, great. Yeah. So at first, my proposed title was A Guide for a Sorcerer's Apprentice. And the whole idea behind it, I could sort of make myself the very enlightened person here and refer to Goethe's poem, but actually my reference to the Sorcerer's Apprentice is Mickey Mouse in Disney's Fantasia, right? You would recall how he was
My
tasked.
son knows that.
Your son knows that.
Ironically, so-
I thought yes, yes, but apparently there are very few people who've seen Disney's Fantasia. So apparently it's no longer a common cultural reference, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. So my editor, we published with Cambridge University Press, they said you have to be more direct to the point. So how can AI enable the virtues is most probably what the title is going to be. So how can AI enable the virtues? That's what I'm interested in, because when you look at the different, I call them issue clusters, because you have to do a bit of literature review, go through what's going on, and there are different areas. For instance, AI is involved in privacy matters, in transparency as well as security. So that's one cluster. Another cluster refers to algorithmic bias, fairness, yeah, so that's a second area. A third area concerns anything related with jobs and work. People, the first question you oftentimes encounter is that, will I lose my job? No thanks to AI. Or how will my job be transformed? How will my work be transformed? Or what are the new opportunities for jobs and work in the future as a result of AI? That's a third area. Fourth area would be how generative AI, such as ChatGPT, affects not only our mental health, but also our societal health, because it is an agent, it could be an agent for polarization, that people aren't able to talk to each other in a calm and rational way because there's just so much filth available in the networks, right?
Right.
And a final area would be everything related with artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence even. And I'm looking at these
Generative
things.
AI concept?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yes. So I've sort of surveyed all these different areas and tried to give a virtual ethics grounded response. Yeah, because for instance, let's take, for example, everything related with bias and fairness. So bias is baked into the whole system. We just call things biased because we don't like them, but as a matter of fact, these are features of the data, and the models are trained to look for those features. Basically,
It's
so
a
these are
feature
patterns.
of humans too.
Exactly. The bias, the data doesn't come from outer space. They're generated by us humans, and the algorithms are designed by us humans. So there's no escaping bias.
No.
Bottom line, there's no escaping bias. It's always there. It's baked into a system. So it's a feature of the data. So initially, I thought for there to be good AI, it had to be unbiased. But no, that is impossible, because furthermore, you may remove bias, but it somehow resurfaces through other
Does
opportunities.
it surface with the human's interpretation of the output that the AI produces
That's-
too? So
that's-
there's a bias upon a bias.
Exactly, exactly. So you have to give up in cleaning the data of biases, because you're introducing your own bias at the same
exactly.
time, right? So therefore, the objective cannot be unbiased AI, because that's simply impossible. So let's see, how about fairness? And I found like almost 30 different definitions of fairness, and they were contradicting each other, right? So it's impossible to satisfy all those definitions of fairness. And it seemed to me that there were like dials on a console that when you ramp up one, the other one sort of diminishes. So it's not an easy choice, right? So
How do you reach that balance?
it's impossible.
Okay.
It's impossible to reach that balance, because, for instance, just to give a concrete example, in large language models, if you were to tone down, for instance, ethnic bias probably you'd be ramping up gender bias.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
see.
So people haven't figured that out really.
And if that's part of the data that it already has included in it, a gender bias, then it just keeps building off
It
itself,
just
right?
yes, that's what they always say, that the biases are amplified and further re-entrenched. So what I'm thinking is that probably we're asking machines too much, meaning what we are really interested are fair judgments, fair judgments. So and justice is not a feature of machines. They're features of humans making decisions.
Yes.
So that's always been my point, that machines, AI, should be supporting us in our decision making rather than making our decisions for ourselves. Yeah?
Right.
That's oftentimes a problem. And I get that because there's such a thing called the automation bias, meaning we defer to machines because machines purportedly are unbiased. They're always, at the top of their game. They're never, they never had a bad night. They're not sleepy and they're never sick. So they're objective. Right? So we sort of confuse objective with being just and fair. And it just doesn't work that way, at least in human issues, right?
What's the difference between objectivity and rationality?
Yeah, okay. That's a deep topic, David.
Maybe for the next podcast.
We have the next podcast for that. Yes, but what I'm saying is that objectivity probably isn't the goal. It isn't the goal because it's not even rational. What I'm saying is, typical example is, for instance, God forbid, you're in a theater and someone shouts fire, right? The first ones you take care of are the immediate members of your family. That's not being objective. That's clearly being biased.
Right.
But that's what you're supposed to do.
It's part of being human.
That's part of being human. That's why they're members of your family. Right? That doesn't mean that you don't care about the other people in the room.
No.
It just means that it's kind of ordered, right? Your obligations to the immediate members of your family come first before the other
that's
members
not
of the
objectivity.
community. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's not objective, but it's rational. It's a rational thing to do, and it's the right thing to do.
Right.
It would be. I would suggest the virtuous thing to do. Okay.
Now, in the book, how does your background in Catholic thought and Catholic teaching inform this tension with AI
Yes.
and virtue?
Okay, yeah, so I'm sort of navigating between two extremes here. Not only me, but I suppose my Catholic faith sort of teaches me or would want me to pursue that golden mean, so to speak. Because we cannot be Luddites. When I say we, any human being or any Catholic for that matter cannot be a Luddite. Why? Okay, because the human condition has always been a technological condition. I mean, thanks to our invention and use of technology, we've survived as a species. Right? Obviously, there are other animal species that are stronger than us, run faster than us, they could fly, we can't. But guess what? We're at the top of the food chain. And why is that the case? It's because of our rationality, our ability to invent tools.
Right.
Yes, we are able to domesticate fire, for instance, which no other animal species, no other living species is able to do, right? So, we cannot be Luddites. We have to embrace technology, but at the same time, we have to master technology. What does this mean? That technology is not going to solve our problems. It creates problems of its own. Technology is always dual use. Hence, it depends on us human beings to decide and take control over technology. That's another sort of theme that I try to underscore in my book, shying away from technological determinism in either of its two forms, meaning absolute optimism, that technology is going to solve all our problems, or technology is going to kill us. Yes. I don't think it's one thing or the other. So it depends on us to use technology wisely for our purposes, rather than bending our knees over technology and sort of giving up and saying, well, whatever has to happen, let it happen. No, I don't think that's the right attitude in engaging with technology. Yes.
Now, you're currently living in the United States for a year, and
Yes.
we're lucky to have you as visiting scholar for the Vera Institute here this year as well. Have you noticed in Spain at the University of Navarra and in Europe, are there differences in the perceptions of the dangers of AI than you're seeing here in the United States?
Absolutely. The problem in Europe, there's such a thing called what they call the Brussels effect. And you could look at it from two different perspectives.
What is the Brussels effect?
The Brussels
Sorry.
effect, yes. It's a book by, she's Finnish originally, if I'm not mistaken, but she's based in the US. I think even in New York. And what it means is that Europe may not invent, or Europe may not be at the forefront of developing AI technology. I mean, the biggest AI companies in Europe are tiddlers compared to the ones in the US or even in China for that matter. However, Europe is a huge market for almost 350 million relatively well-heeled individuals. Therefore, no one could sort of ignore the European market. And the Brussels effect, put simply, is that European regulators are kind of overactive
Okay.
in regulating the technology. And
Are they reactive, over-reactive, or over-proactive?
proactive
Okay.
in that sense. Not even having the technology, nonetheless, they're regulating for the rest of the globe, basically.
But it's hard to predict.
It's hard to predict. That's one of the stumbling blocks. As a matter of fact, right before ChatGPT was released, the EU already had its AI laws in place, which were sort of risk-based. The whole rationale behind the EU regulation was that depending on the level of risk, you had to take certain precautions, so forth, which sounds reasonable, right? Until you come up with this technology, chatbots, which on the one hand could be as innocuous as, I don't know, I mean, coming up with jokes for parties. But on the other hand, they could lead to certain levels of entanglement and engagement that lead people to self-harm. So it's the
Yeah, we've
same
seen that in the
technology.
news.
And we've seen
Yeah.
that, unfortunately. So it's exactly the same technology. You cannot regulate the technology, rather you have to regulate the use case. But the use case cannot be foreseen even by the inventors themselves.
Right.
You may recall that ChatGPT was released as a beta. They didn't even know. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're selling something and this is to be used for these purposes and please take these precautions. They didn't know
Right.
what was going to happen. And then it just took off immediately. Lots of people adapted it like in the millions, right? Suddenly. So from that perspective, it's the most successful launch. Yeah. And they didn't even know what it was actually going to be used for. So no one has a crystal ball, not even the EU regulators. But they're taking advantage of that. The Brussels effect, EU is basically regulating for everyone else. Whereas here in the US, probably it's a more, they speak of sandboxes. There's hardly, I'm not an expert in law, I'm much less in the US law. But I think it's more market driven, it's more technology friendly, and
I'd agree with that.
yes, and let the states regulate within their borders.
Right.
But of course, this sort of technology cuts across all the different borders, so that has its downsides too. And even for certain things that I think are already beyond doubt, such as the harm that some of these large language models could inflict on younger people, on the more vulnerable populations.
I'm worried about that.
Yes.
I'm worried
yes.
about that at home. I'm worried about that here with my students.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So there is space for regulation. One thing clear though is that self-regulation will never be sufficient, especially in the part of these companies.
I would imagine
Yes.
that's true.
That's true. You would recall that some months ago, even a year ago, probably because things are happening so fast, these companies even appeared in Congress calling for a moratorium, right? Let's stop, let's all stop. Let's try to sort of agree on what the red lines are.
Right.
They went public with this. I mean, anyone could look it up in archives, YouTube, or whatever. However, it was just so hypocritical. I'm sorry to use that word.
No,
because
you're
while
being honest.
yes, while at the same time they were asking everyone to stop,
Yeah.
they did not stop themselves and just tried to run even faster. So, could you really trust such corporate leaders? I have my doubts.
Well, perhaps building on that for maybe a final question. I've been reading a German sociologist's work, Hartmut Rosa, on the social acceleration of modernity, which one of the biggest pillars, of course, is technology, and its effects on humans. So sort of the interface, the interaction between humans and technology. Does your book provide sort of a hopeful future for that interaction on what's going to happen to humans, not just with work, but how humans will actually conceive themselves and be actually live their lives?
Sure. Yes, there is hope if we are mindful in the way we use and design technology. There's a bit of hype around AI because our capacity to annihilate our world already exists. It's not something new that AI is introducing.
No, we've seen
Certainly
this throughout
not.
history.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. I think the unique challenge of AI is that we offload our higher capacities for decision making and for thought. That is my main concern. That somehow relinquishing our humanity because they just come so close. I don't like driving, for instance. I don't like driving. I've been to, well, I've got a driving license, but I just don't like driving. Does it make me feel? Sometimes it makes me feel a bit useless. Yeah, thank God for Uber and Lyft and all that. But I don't feel any less human simply because I'm not a good driver.
Oh God, no. Sure.
However, if I can't think for myself, nor make decisions for myself, because I've offloaded the cognitive and decision-making load to a machine, then I would feel
That's
a little
dangerous.
bit easier. Yeah, that's dangerous.
That's dangerous for all of humanity, and that's what we have to protect ourselves from.
Exactly.
Well, I am very much looking forward to your book coming out. Thank you for these insights, and thank you for coming, my friend.
Thank you very much,
We really
David.
appreciated hearing about this.
Yes.
I think it's extremely relevant to not only this series, but to our whole podcast audience, and I think this is going to be quite a very important piece of work. So I wanted to thank Don Moe, our Media Center Director, for allowing us to be here and to record for us. He's a wonderful mentor and friend. And to our production team in the business school, Andrew Cummings and Tricia Brancolini, for producing and editing these podcasts. So we will see you next time, but please look for us on Spotify, Apple, LinkedIn, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I am David Wasilewski, and I really appreciate you being here today, and we will see you next time. Thank you.